I'm in Montreal on the traditional and unceded territory of the Kantayya, also known as the Mohawk, a place that has long served as a meeting place for many First Nations in Canada and the original stewards of our lands and our waters. Thank you all for joining us tonight, and a special thanks to those who donated. As a charity that aims to innovate education, your contributions help us move forward and push education to the digital space. I'd like to introduce you tonight to this evening's moderator, Mahalia Verna. Mahalia is an award-winning producer and senior director of operations strategy at ED Films, a Montreal-based animation studio and tech studio here in Montreal. Passionate about sisterhood, inclusion, and next-gen talent, I'm also proud to have her as the president of the Jeunesse board of directors. Mahalia is a connector of ideas, strategies, and resources, and she believes deeply when people are fully engaged and inspired, and when we are together, we can achieve so much more. Over to you, Mahalia.
Thank you, Kate, and thanks to all of you for joining us this evening. We're so happy to have you join us for this really important and very timely conversation. We wanted to organize this panel around the documentary Coded Bias, which we hope all of you have been able to stream and enjoy in preparation to this conversation, because we want to be able to discuss the themes that arise from this documentary, of talking about biases and injustice around the development of AI technology. And as perhaps many of you are aware, just this week, we've seen these issues flare up in real life with the sudden dismissal of the leading AI ethicist, Tinit Jabru, from her role at Google AI ethics team. So it serves as a reminder that there's a lot of work to be done in and around emerging technologies such as AI. So thank you again for joining us. Now, if you haven't caught Coded Bias, but you're still joining us tonight, thank you for your participation. And I'll just read to you a little bit of a recap. So I'll read this to you now. Modern society sits at the intersection of two crucial questions. What does it mean when artificial intelligence increasingly governs our liberties? And also, what are the consequences for the people AI is biased against? So when MIT Media Lab researcher Joy Buolamwini discovers that most facial recognition software does not accurately identify darkened skinned faces and the faces of women, she delves into an investigation of a widespread bias in algorithms. As it turns out, artificial intelligence is not neutral, and women are leading the charge to ensure our civil rights are protected. So in gathering this evening and organizing this panel, here's what it's about, and here's who it's for. We want to be able to further the conversation around AI ethics. We want to help move activists into action. And for KCJ, it's a chance to get talking to the grown-ups in the tech industry who maybe don't have children, but who align with our mission. I'd like to take a moment to give special thanks to Golnush Farnidi, because she was supposed to be one of our featured panelists, and she was not able to join us tonight because she is expecting a baby at any moment now. So we thank her for her willingness to participate, but we also understand her circumstances, and we wish her all the best. So now I'm going to take some time to introduce you to our panelists. And I'll tell you a little bit about each one of them. So we'll start with the filmmaker of Coded Bias, Shalini Kantayya. She's a filmmaker whose film Coded Bias premiered at the 2020 edition of the Sundance Film Festival. She has directed for the National Geographic television series Breakthrough, and her debut film, Catching the Sun, was named as New York Times Critics' Pick at the LA Film Festival. She is a TED Fellow, a Fulbright Scholar, and an Associate of the UC Berkeley Graduate School of Journalism. Thank you for joining us, Shalini. Our next panelist that I want to introduce to you is Ananya Chadha. She is a pilot. She's an 18-year-old first-year engineer student at Stanford University. She has worked in gene editing, put genomic data on the blockchain, and developed neurotech devices like brain-controlled prosthetics. Ananya has worked on AI at IBM and developed COVID reports for the Department of National Defense. She has won many awards, acknowledging her remarkable technical achievements, only at 18, including being listed as one of Canada's top 100 most powerful women this year, alongside Kate Arthur, our third panelist and the founder and CEO of Kids Code Jeunesse. Kids Code Jeunesse is a charity that introduces digital skills to kids and educators across Canada. In 2019, KCJ launched the Kids 2030 initiative to educate 1 million kids and 50,000 educators on AI ethics and using technology to achieve the UN's SDGs. Kate is an award-winning leader and who has recently been named one of Canada's top 100 most powerful women. So we have quite the panel for you. I welcome you all three to this really important conversation.
Thanks, Mahalia.
All right, so let's dive in. Let's talk about the first part of the conversation. We're going to focus on the aspects of bias and ethics around AI. So let's dive into coded bias. And my first question to all of you would be, in your opinion, what's the key takeaway message or the call to action of coded bias? I'd like to actually start with you, Ananya, to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think the film did an amazing job of making it clear that biases are so prevalent in a lot of emerging technologies, especially AI. And there are so many key critical decisions that need to be made in our future, how people live, like it's all going to be affected by these algorithms as you see increased usage. So with that takeaway, I think the clear action item becomes, in order to solve these really controversial decisions that will come up in our future inevitably, we're definitely going to need a more diverse group of people who are aware about the technology, who understand how it works, who can then become involved in it and start making decisions in the industry itself. There are so many cases, that show just how powerful these tools and technologies are going to become for our future and what it means to be human and how we live our lives. So it's like absolutely critical to get a good discussion from people with a wide variety of backgrounds and insights and understandings from around the world. So,
yeah,
I'm really excited that you all watched it and learned about AI. So now you know more.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ananya. Yeah, definitely being more representative and inclusive in these things. Kate, your thoughts? What was a takeaway for you or the call to action in coded bias?
There were just so many, and Shalini, thank you so much for even thinking of putting this together. You know, just the actual foresight of this was amazing, and it's enlightened so many of us. My main reaction turning this off the first time I watched it, because I've watched it several times now, was, oh my gosh, we're in the wild, wild west. And, you know, the for-profit money-making machines are just doing whatever they want and however they want to be able to make as much money as they can. And what they're doing is using us to do that. And, you know, I think the call to action is very much around government and regulations. And I think of it about, you know, when the first car came in, like there were no roads, there were no laws around driving, there were no, you know, licenses that we need to get. And we're really at that stage with artificial intelligence, and the journey that we went on through the film really highlighted some of the big challenges and dangers that we need to look out for.
All right, thank you, Kate. Yeah, regulation definitely has its place part of this conversation. Well, Shalini, you're the woman behind this documentary. So what say you in terms of the message that you were trying to impart on us all?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for hosting this important conversation and for all your insights into the film. I almost feel like I didn't have to show up. You guys sort of can make the film and let everyone sort of have the conversation without me. I don't know that when I start a film that I have a thesis in mind. I feel like I start off a film with a question, more often a character. And in this case, that character was Joy Bellamwini, an outstanding scientist who's just like trying to make a Snapchat filter, you know, something like that, work on an art project, and quite innocently stumbles upon racial bias in facial recognition that's not like on a shelf somewhere, but actually like being sold to the FBI and to ICE and to law enforcement, to our police, often being used in secret. And so what was compelling to me about Joy was not just that she had the research, but that she was making these connections between communities that could actually be hurt. And let's be clear, we can all be hurt. I think what I learned in the making of this film, because I think that the process of making films for me is definitely one of discovery. I definitely don't know everything. I barely knew what an algorithm was when I started making Coded Bias. But what I learned in the making of this film is that you know, everything that I had learned up until that point was sort of like that AI is sort of this thing of science fiction. Everything I knew about it was sort of from the brain of Steven Spielberg or Stanley Kubrick, because I'm old enough to know who Stanley Kubrick is. And so I feel that I had this idea of AI, and I didn't actually understand what it was. And I'm so grateful to the brilliant cast of the film for giving me an education and helping me understand that AI is becoming this invisible gatekeeper to opportunities that govern human destiny. Stuff like who gets hired, what quality of healthcare you get, how long a prison sentence someone serves. Sometimes it's the first tier in decision making into who gets into college, sorting those scores into categories. And what I learned and what was so terrifying and alarming in the making of Coded Bias is these automated systems have not been vetted for racial bias, for gender bias. Sometimes they haven't even been vetted for accuracy. And we've been sold this sort of what Meredith Broussard so poignantly calls techno-chauvinism, this idea that technology is going to solve all of the world's problems, and how that is not a healthy way to think about problem solving in the 21st century. And so what I really learned is that everything that we love as people of a democracy, everything that we value, civil rights, fair housing, fair employment, fair access to healthcare, the fact that Black people shouldn't be the target of disparate police brutality and police scrutiny. All of these things will be touched by AI. And so what I hope the film attempts to do, I think, is to, one, communicate vital science and technology, because I feel like for many people, and I think for many of the activists, the everyday people, not just the scientists, but the everyday people who stood up against big tech, that there was this fear of like, oh my God, I don't know. And you began to see that knowledge was power. and that you were scared. And even for myself as a filmmaker, even having advanced degrees and sort of fancy accolades, like I was so intimidated. Oh my God, I'm going to say like machine learning and algorithm, I'm going to have incorrect usage. You know, not everybody knows everything like Ananya, right? And so some of us have to come to the table in a certain way. And I hope, you know, in the last year, especially, we've learned how vital science communication is. And sometimes science researchers need help being with bridges so that we can govern, we can get vital information, and we can make public policy, we the people. And so what I hope the film does is communicate that vital science through the groundbreaking scholarship of people like Joy and Kathy and Sophia Moja Noble and Deborah Raji and Zainab Tufekci and so many others. But also connect that science to what it means in people's real lives. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the people who are in the laboratories and in those sort of are making those programming decisions are not connected to the communities that it could actually harm. And so that's what I hope the film engages. And so I hope that it actually empowers people. And I'm so excited to talk among educators and parents because I also believe that we're just at the beginning of algorithmic education. And this is stuff that we interact with every day. I mean, this is the only way that we can be together today. And so there is a whole new arm of education, and it can't just be geniuses like Ananya that get to sort of play in this field, that we all should all have a place to talk about these issues.
Yeah, thank you, Shalini. Well, I can confirm to you, I speak for myself, I definitely felt empowered and more aware. And since seeing coded bias, I have a heightened awareness of the algorithms and the AI behind everything that I manipulate and the environment around me. So it definitely worked in my case. And I really appreciate that in the film, you really gave us a sense of what goes on behind the scenes and then how it impacts communities in such specific ways, but that we don't necessarily, we're not aware of or not attuned to. So you hit your mark. Now let's continue talking about facial recognition technologies, because they're featured pretty prominently in the film. So it leads me to wonder, how do we balance the need to diversify training data without furthering or deepening or entrenching pre-existing biases, or accidentally like creating new ones for these groups of people that are more vulnerable? Either Shalini or Ananya, whichever one of you wants to take it first.
I'll just say that it's not my belief that we can make a perfect algorithm. I think when I talk about tech companies, they're like, oh, we'll just clean up the data and we'll make a more inclusive culture and all be fixed. And that's not, I think, what I'm saying. I think that coded bias is a call for a more humane society, an approach to technology, and more civic engagement at the table. So it's not just technologists that are making these decisions, but ethicists and sort of people who are in governance, and that it shouldn't be tech that's deciding where these moral lines are, that we also have to be governing. That being said, tech's inclusion is abysmal. It's 14% women in AI researchers. That's not acceptable in the 21st century of any STEM research, not just because it's some social good, you know, like it's a social welfare project, but because it's half the genius of the population that you're going to deploy your technology on. And so I think that tech needs to reckon with the fact that if it's going to be innovative and serve the world, that it needs to have developers in the conversation that reflect the world.
Yeah, thank you for that. Definitely have more seats at the table. Ananya, did you want to chime in on this?
Yeah, I did. I think that's so important. Like, I totally agree. There needs to be more engagement from people, and they need to understand what's happening, because there's so many controversial decisions that like the general public needs to be aware so that they're able to help out. You asked like, how can you increase the diversity in data sets to help remove bias? I think artificial intelligence and current neural networks are interesting, because you would imagine that you have some sort of artificial way of making decisions. Like, you have like this algorithm that knows how to make decisions like a human, but it's actually not like that at all. The way that current machine learning models work is they just find correlations between data sets, which is why people say data sets are so powerful, because all the algorithm does, it doesn't think really. It just finds correlations between like what you give it in the data. And then it says, oh, just by correlation, we see this is this. So if you continue with just this type of model that pretty much everywhere uses, then you would need to be able to remove bias in the data sets in the first place, which is like a very interesting problem. And there's a lot to unpack there about like how that can be done, and how you can get diverse data sets, because the incentives aren't there right now to get diverse data sets, which is absolutely terrible. And so it's like unapologetically clear that there needs to be like less bias in the data set, but then it's unclear how to do that. And I think another layer that will just come up inevitably if we have to try and make these machine learning models better is like, first, be more cognizant of how you get your data, but then second, having another layer there of like a real human being like, does this make sense? And like a check. And then there's been a lot of cool advancements in the field of like reinforcement learning, which is a type of machine learning which can let you see, does this make sense or not? And then if it does make sense, you can give a positive reinforcement to the algorithm. And if it doesn't make sense, then you can give a negative reinforcement. Like, a human can add this, or a person can add this, if it's called human in the loop or not human in the loop. So I think there's a few interesting strategies that can be used, but like the conversation definitely needs to increase. So very interesting subject.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what I'm hearing is that like we can't leave it all to the tech to do it on its own. The human has to kind of step in and help shape it and guide it some more. Interesting. And it's really interesting to hear you on like the data sets and the challenge of diversifying that. There are a number of decision-making algorithms that have replicated human biases, such as Apple's credit card giving men a higher credit score than women, or United Health prioritizing healthcare for white patients over Black patients. Algorithms replicate centuries of human biases. So the question would be, where do you start if we want the people making AI to address this? And going back to the point about regulation, what role should government and regulators play? Kate, do you want to chime in on that one first?
Yeah, sure. And it builds very much onto what you've just sort of been saying, Shalini and Anna, on who's building it and how it's being built. And I spend a lot of time in talking with government and talking with UNESCO and UNICEF and helping draft policies. And we're at such an early stage of this awareness, and it's technology moves so fast, and AI is moving even faster. And with industry being able to go so quickly, government just can't keep up. If you knock on most government doors, they don't really know what AI is how it works. You know, how can the people who are making the policies and the laws make policies and laws and understand the urgency to this when they don't even understand it? So there's also the awareness to bring to government, to those who make those big decisions, around that urgency of, you know, who's building it, who's using our data, in particular for youth, which is our concern. Is, you know, we have minors who are, you know, these big tech companies are taking data from children who don't even have a say, and we're not protecting them. You know, I compare it to, you know, I remember when I was a kid, we would watch watch our cartoons, and there would be all these ads targeted towards kids, and then a law was put in place where, you know, you can't advertise to kids anymore. You know, it's not right. And these are the sort of laws that we want to start seeing being put and enforced on tech industry for the youth in particular, but in society overall. So there's a big play. And the thing with algorithms and AIs is they see no borders. And there are no boundaries. So it's not just, you know, Canada, let's just, you know, let's sort ourselves out. It is very much international relations at play, where we have to build an international strategy and frameworks in place to protect our data and the building of AI and who's training it, who's using it. And I loved what you said, Shalini, about vetting. And Ananya, you alluded to that as well, having a vetting system put into place where, you know, the AI systems are doing their thing, but there's actually a human intervention at some point that allows it to pass through the gates. It's complex.
Yeah, but I think what I'm hearing is that there's a necessity for algorithmic literacy at all levels, even Absolutely. At government level, to really have more effective conversations and global collaboration around that issue. Ananya, did you want to add to this?
Yeah, there are so many different lenses that I think are at play here that could be looked at, that need to be looked at. If you take a look at government and regulation, I think what Kate mentioned is so correct. Like, you first need to make sure that the government and the regulators are aware of what's happening so that they can make knowledgeable laws and regulation. And maybe it's just a young person thing, but I always get memes like from people sent to me about like how in the Facebook trial, there was like a senator that asked like, how do you make money? And then it was like, we run ads, as just like an example of how sometimes how out of the loop certain politicians can be about technology, which makes sense. So the question becomes, first, you have to keep them aware. How do you keep them aware? Like, you need political will from the people to be able to say, like, we care about this and it's necessary for these things to come into place. And the good thing about people caring is it also influences tech companies, because the companies themselves need to make sure that they're doing good things so that they have good branding and imaging for everyone. When I think about the technology side, about like, how do we want to make the algorithms better and remove the biases, I definitely think human in the loop has to play a role. And I think that there will continue to be a lot of different developments in the space. I was reading a research paper recently about so currently AI works as a black box. You don't know how it works. You don't know how it got its answer. It just has its answer. And you're like, oh, cool. What were the reasons behind why you made this choice? Like, I don't know. Like, there is no decisions. Like, there's no reasoning really. So people are looking at how can you make it, like, give it reasoning so that at least there's something to reason with there, something to understand behind. So I think that when you have like increased political will from the people in the first place, then researchers also go looking into how can we make these algorithms better. So I think there's different actors at play, but I do believe that there's hope that things can become better.
We hope so, Ananya. You're the next generation.
That's right. So my next thought is, like, how much information should be made available for people who are using AI products so that they can make more informed decisions? Shalini, I'm going to go to you first on that one.
I actually think that would be better answered by Kate or Ananya, actually.
Sure.
I think the hard thing about information is sometimes there's like a level of technicality where if information is served in a certain way, it's not digestible at all. And so I think if you want to go about sharing information about artificial intelligence, it has to be in a form that's understandable to most people, or there has to be some sort of like easy education way for the government to educate the public up to like a certain understanding, maybe with like a, I don't know, 5-minute ad or something. But I think making sure that knowledge is understandable by people is very important. And so if you are giving information about AI products to the consumer or to the end user, you first have to be like, why do you care? Because people won't even know that they have to care about this in the first place. They won't know the bias is existing. So like you have to get them to care. And then once you get them to care, you have to explain it to them in a way that's digestible. So I think those two things really come into play when you're asking people to be more aware about these things. And what's interesting is I can't help but imagine, like, with technology moving so fast, there are so many technologies like this that have power to do good, but also bad, and like exacerbate inequalities in such large ways and harm society as well as help society. But there's definitely pros and cons to a lot. So something I wonder is, like, with advancements in technology, like virtual reality and artificial intelligence, and you have brain-computer interfaces, like Elon Musk's neural implant company. Like there's so much in technology that ethics need to be questioned on. So like, how can you keep people encouraged to continue learning about a lot of different industries and keep learning more? Because I think only when the public is at least aware about these like startups operating in stealth mode can we create the best future for humanity. Like, as an example, some people would love to live in virtual reality their whole life, but some people would find some sort of value of real life, whatever that is. And like, some people would love to take like a genetic test and find out if they are likely to have Alzheimer's. And some people, like, there's nothing that they can do about it in the first place, so they wouldn't want to know that. And so there are so many things in a lot of different technologies that are hard to understand and have like wishy-washy, like it's a gray area across the board. So yeah, definitely keeping people aware through documentaries, which is stellar, which this one is amazing.
Exactly.
Others are so powerful.
Yeah, for sure. No, definitely a documentary like Coded Bias definitely helps open things up in terms of awareness and helping people care, and to at least start scratching the surface, right? To like gain an understanding. Kate, any thoughts you want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. To build on what Ananya was saying, technology is neither good or bad. It's technology, and it's those who build it that are, are responsible. And I think it comes to education and that awareness that Ananya was mentioning. Like, public awareness is so important, and education on how to use this technology and what it can do, because it is almighty powerful in many ways, and it can go in the wrong direction, which is why putting in those regulations and waking governments up, which seeing Joy do that in the movie and still seeing her doing it today is inspiring, and I think so important to make sure that it's being addressed at the people who can put in place those laws.
Yeah, absolutely. So many of these, I found that the activists that were presented in the documentary really helped humanize the complexity and of the challenges that are at hand. Definitely, yeah.
Absolutely, and I think we have to just kind of start to question this blind faith that we have in big data as and sort of question, why is the algorithm serving me up this? And once you become that, even just that question of like, oh, I'm not going to watch what Netflix puts in my queue, or I'm not going to watch the next song that Spotify serves me. I'm going to sort of make my own choices around this, because we haven't yet even grappled, forget all the big egregious stuff in my film, like we haven't even just grappled with that invisible hand.
Exactly.
That silent nudge that we're all being served through algorithms around our information systems.
Yeah, exactly. And I think to that, Shalini, is the importance of, again, the education, but critical thinking skills. Being able to critically question and step back, especially for the little ones, is, you know, why am I seeing the same, this preference bubble of YouTube stream that I'm seeing? If you have the knowledge and the awareness, that's power to make decisions, you know, on your own. And whether that decision might not be right or wrong to, you know, depending on who's making that decision, but as long as you have that knowledge to make that decision, I think that's where
And I think even simple things like, I didn't fully understand until making this film, and it's something that I like say to every student, like, Google is not a information source. It is an advertising platform.
Right.
When you are fact checking my film, you will need 2 other sources. They're not, you know,
go to Wikipedia.
Exactly. And so I think that we, even around that, just understanding that Google is not an encyclopedia. And all around the world, how are we supposed to solve climate change when what you get in your Google search about climate change says climate change is a hoax, and what I get says climate change is the definition of the scientific meaning? And so like when we're getting that kind of vast amounts of different information in our information systems, just being aware of that, I think for students especially, is really important, and reaffirming the importance of a library. Let's bring back the library.
Absolutely.
Or a system like the library, which is not targeted and predatory and based on capacity.
Yeah, definitely not depending on one source. Yeah.
A helpful tip that I found, because I think what you guys are saying is so important and so powerful. Like, I thought, I can't help but realize that previously we would all make decisions in our life. Like, we would all be like, have a crossroads and then make a decision. But now, like, these algorithms are like feeding us our next decision. Like, we're not actually making a choice anymore. It's like, what's next in my feed, or what comes up. Like, these choices are no longer ours to make. Now the companies are making them. So something that I tried, which is helpful, is you can delete all your cookies and you can delete all your history. I did it on YouTube and Google and everywhere, and now it just gives me like as if I'm a new user. And so it's made me less addicted to YouTube, which is nice because it's given me like now everything. So it's not what addicts me continuously and like crazy. But I also think that it's beneficial to delete it so you can actually get information from everywhere at the start.
So do you do this like every time?
So you can set up like an auto delete, which is nice, like on YouTube. So it deletes the quickest one I think they have is like every 3 months, which is, but whenever I find myself realizing something odd is going on, I just go back and delete.
And that's that knowledge coming back to, right? That you know what the systems are doing, so you're able to take that action. Whereas I probably would want to keep my Spotify in that bubble because I don't want to be listening to stuff that I don't like, you know. But again, it's a choice that I'm making, that, you know, I want the algorithms to give me the stuff that I like, you know, and see, but then maybe not when I'm watching YouTube or Netflix, because you want to open it up again.
Well, thanks for that tip, Ananya. That was great. So now for the next part of our conversation, I want to dive into empathy and storytelling. It's interesting, Kate, because you were talking about critical thinking, and now I want to talk about how can we leverage soft skills like empathy and creativity to get more underrepresented voices in the discussion around AI and ethics. Kate, do you want to start things off on that question?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just taking some notes because it's inspiring stuff. And I'm looking at Shalini's, all her wonderful books in the background. So I studied English literature, and that's my background. And I really believe in the power of storytelling and to explain and to demystify complex situations, also recording history, sharing stories, communicating and building relationships with each other. I do think in the world of artificial intelligence, this is going to be an area where there needs to be more focus on the empathy side of things. And, you know, I look to the education system always, and again, the youth that we reach is the you know, society separates the arts and sciences in the education systems, and you know, you either go down the science stream or you go down the art stream. And I think with artificial intelligence and this coming so quickly, is we really need to be bringing these together so that there is the ethical discussions when building scientifically, and scientifically thinking of the ethical questions. You know, it's no longer separate. And if you look at, you know, some of the best innovators in history, Steve Jobs, you know, being one of the most recent, they were both artists and scientists. And I think, you know, we need to really bring those back together into our kids' education so that they're able to have those empathetic lenses on when they're using and building the technology.
So it's not so siloed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Shalini, did you want to add anything?
Well, I think that, you know, I make films because I believe they're, what Roger Ebert, the film critic, said is that they're empathy machines, and that they, you can sit in a dark cinema. Someday again, we will sit in a dark and sort of identify with a person who has an experience radically different than you. And so with my film, you may not care about artificial intelligence, but maybe you come to care about joy, and you go on a journey with her, and that makes you care about the issue. And so to me, it's through the stories of people that we get to connect. And so I very much use the film as a tool to spark empathy and share stories.
Yeah, and as I was saying before, it humanizes the various complex issues and like their impact on various communities in different parts. I really appreciated that about your film, Shalini. Let's stay with storytelling and talk about art, the role of art. In the documentary, Joy shares her spoken word poems with us, and personally, those were the really impactful moments for me in the film. So, what do you think? What do you think the role art plays in making concepts that it plays or could play actually in making concepts like AI and bias more accessible to audiences? Like, how do we, like, can art play a role in demystifying or breaking things down and making them less complex and more relatable for audiences, and especially like in underrepresented communities, perhaps?
Absolutely. You have to use art, you have to use storytelling, you have to use culturally appropriate and relevant storytelling. But I feel like it is the way that you outreach to communities and make this stuff accessible. And there's so many people who have seen the film and then said like, oh, I didn't realize like this is what it was, or this is how it impacts me, or I just got it all off social media after seeing your movie. And so I think that there is this real way in which, and even in COVID, you also see the way in which art fills in the gaps of human connection and reaches people. And so it's a very powerful tool to communicate and to shape the future.
Thank you. Ananya, did you want to chime in on this?
Art and storytelling is so powerful. Like, humans have evolved to care about each other through stories, and I think it's clear that storytelling is like the biggest way that anybody cares about anything that's not themselves. And so I think that, like, I'm really excited to learn more about it and see where it can go. There's a lot I don't know, but I'm eager to know more.
Oh, we're all learning, always learning, Ananya. What do you think young people should be learning about AI and ethics in school to prepare them as well-rounded citizens? Actually, Ananya, I'd love to hear you first on this.
Yes. I've thought a lot about like the future of education and human development because it's very interesting to me. I think people, like students, should be at least aware of the tools and technologies that will shape our future. Things like artificial intelligence and quantum computing and nanotechnology and blockchain, or like there's so many, nuclear fusion, phage therapy, like, and I don't mean understand technicalities, because I don't think that first it's relevant because technology changes so much. And then I also don't think it's interesting to go straight into technicalities. So I think understanding first just like general ideas about these things and getting students excited to learn more about the future and what it may hold and the different ideas that are coming up. So just sharing excitement and general knowledge. And then I think also teaching kids how to learn on their own and like how to learn about things that they care about and follow their natural curiosity to go learn about things that seem interesting to them, whatever that is, in whatever field, because the world is changing so much. The knowledge you need to know is changing so much. And so understanding how not to study for a test, but how to be able to understand information that's pertinent to you and relevant. And then I think the combination of first being aware of new technologies that are important, and not necessarily technologies, new ideas, new societal structures, new just like things that are changing so quickly, and then enabling kids to understand that, oh wow, like if there's this concept that you're interested in, there's like websites where you can access free courses about them, or you can find YouTube channels to first expose you to things that you didn't even know that are interesting to you, and then go deeper, and you can read research papers and go through patent websites and talk to people by cold emailing them and they might respond, and learning like you can take classes and read books, and just I think those two elements are very powerful.
So definitely encouraging exploration and curiosity and play, and how that can really open so much up for everyone, actually. Kate, would you like to add anything to this?
Yeah, to build on to what Ananya said, with just the two parts. One is the way, as you said, the way we teach and the relevant way we teach. I mean, we're in this fourth industrial revolution that is completely shifting the way we do everything. And we're still teaching our kids the way we did 150 years ago, you know, sitting in a classroom, memorizing information, and they regurgitate it and forget it the next day. And really, it is like Ananya, you say, they need to be exploring and discovering, thinking for themselves. Again, come back to the critical thinking skills. They need to be looking at, on the second part, artificial intelligence, and how, you know, AI is not magic. AI is not perfect. It's important who's training the data, who's using your data. So coming back to the critical thinking skills, I think it's really important for kids to be creating and making lots of mistakes and learning from those mistakes. You know, we're still in an environment where you have to, you know, you're right or wrong, you fail, you succeed, and we punish those who fail and we merit those who succeed. And yet there's so much rich learning in failure that we shouldn't be squashing down. So I think that we're at a period in history where there is mass amount of change that we're in now, and that we still need to do to embrace this technology, and how quickly it's moving and changing our lives.
Thank you, Kate. I'm going to go to my last question before we switch to the Q&A. What gives you hope for the future of AI? Any one of you can go first.
Well, I'll just start by saying that I make documentaries because they remind me that everyday people can make a difference. And in making the film, I saw that happen. You know, we saw 3 of the biggest tech companies in the world change their policies around their sale of facial recognition to law enforcement, and that happened because of the brave research of women in the film, and also people in the streets, sort of making those connections between racially biased, invasive surveillance technology and the people it could harm. And also, you know, everyday people like Trinae Moran, who, you know, not only stopped her landlord from installing facial recognition, but inspired the first law. And she was a Brooklyn resident who didn't even know what biometric data was when her landlord tried to, you know, sort of rush in this invasive technology. And, you know, Daniel Santos, an amazing teacher who was, you know, Teacher of the Year 10 years in a row, and fought against this algorithm, you know, sort of arbitrarily, you know, rating him as a bad teacher. And so I have seen time and time again that everyday people can make a difference. And sort of what matters most is that we care enough to learn more, to educate ourselves, and to talk with our friends and our neighbors and our colleagues about these issues, and to take small steps towards action.
Thank you. Kate, Ananya?
Yeah, I'll jump in quickly. My real takeaway and what gives me hope is the youth. So, you know, Ananya, having you here and talking so eloquently and so educated, and knowing that you are building technology and creating technology, and you're passionate about how that's being built, and you know, I'm certain that you will continue to pass that message on to the generation behind you, and your peers. But I do really have hope in the future because of the youth coming up who care about the world and care about people, and will clean up our mess.
Thank you, Kate. Well, Ananya, we leave the last word to you on, you know, this question about hope.
Thank you. I have a lot of hope as well. I have hope for the young people. I also love what Shalini mentioned about how everyone can make a difference. Like, I also have hope for the older people, because everybody plays such a big role. I have hope for the possibilities of AI too, how we're going to be facing tough problems like climate change, or how we want to govern societies. And I wonder if we can find unique insights from AI to help in those things as well. And I have hope in humanity. I think humanity's done a lot of bad things, but there's also a lot of good things, a lot of joy and kindness and love that is shared. And I have hope. Like, I choose to be very optimistic about the future of humanity, and I think that we will rise to solve all of our challenges. I think that humanity is definitely on track, and we care to be able to set up a future, like the best possible future.
Well said, Ananya. Thank you so much. Hannah sent me a question in the chat, and it's a question for Shalini. So I hope you have a few minutes for us, Shalini, on this. The question is, what systems do we need to build to tell more diverse narratives in the world of technology?
Well, filmmaking reflects the world of AI. It's not an easy place for a woman either. But I think that, thank you so much for the question. I think that what I hope is that this film will show us that we all have a place at the table and a story to tell around AI, and that we all have a direct experience of AI that we can share with one another. And that by recognizing that, we can start to realize that, you know, all of the power is sort of on one side. And the more we can start to question it, understand these systems, pass that knowledge around. And also, I hope that we can take these small local actions. You know, I've seen a lot of hope when schools ban facial recognition. And then people start to have a conversation. Well, why are you banning facial recognition? And then people start to have a conversation around invasive surveillance technology and what happens and what is the history of invasive surveillance technology. And there's so many different ways that you can impact it. So I hope that when people start to teach about AI, that we no longer think of it as the stuff of Steven Spielberg, and that we start to thinking of it as like, oh no, this is something that we have to talk about when we're talking about healthcare. This is something that we need to talk about when we're talking about education. And also I want to say that it does make a difference when you pass things locally, because tech companies won't want to make a lot of different policies. So when one state in America passes a data protection policy, the rest has to follow suit. So that is one way. And then in terms of storytelling, we just have to find different ways to reach people to tell the story of AI, because the story of AI is essentially the story of our future. And what's happened is a small group of people have usurped that story and said, oh, look over here, this is magic, and you don't have any role in this. And look, this is magic. And so what we have to say, no, this is science, and we have to question it. And we have to empower ourselves with it, and we have to make decisions and lead with it. And we have to engage a whole lot of other people in the conversation. That means artists and teachers and civil society. And so I really hope that we'll have more interdisciplinary dialogue on these issues, and bring more artists in dialogue with scientists. Because I think part of the reason that I have become a science communicator is I've also had the benefit of being a part of so many scientific communities and being that artist misfit and not being afraid. And now I sit at the tables with Stanford and people at think tanks and realize, like, wow, to hear someone at Stanford look at me and say, oh, misfit artist, I never heard of someone frame it that way. You made me see this technology I've been working on for 5 years in a different way. And to know that I have that to offer and you have that to offer, I think that creates a more interesting dialogue. And I think that technologists need to understand our value in helping them see what they're doing, and shining a light into their own biases and places they miss.
Well said.
Thank you so much, Shalini. Yeah, absolutely well said. I have another question here. It's directed to all the panelists. It goes as follows. What would you tell people who are afraid to raise awareness of the impact of AI to the people around them?
Well, I think this is a good moment to say that all the scientists in my film at one time have been attacked, have had their research been publicly questioned. We know that Google researcher and lead ethicist at Google, Timney Gebru, was just fired from Google for a paper that she wrote that raised awareness about bias in AI. You see in the film that the same researchers are questioned by the biggest companies in the world just before the biggest companies in the world change their policy because of the research that they tried to defy and dismiss. And so I just think it's important to say that when you question power, you have to be prepared for its consequences. And I think the thing that we need to look at is that in a democracy, the amount of power that big tech has isn't healthy for us. That we need some balance to those powers as citizens. No, you should not have unfettered access to our data in order to prey on me with ads for an indefinite amount of time. That does not seem like a reasonable social contract that I didn't sign into, especially when we can't opt out of these systems. And so, I think that we're just at the beginning of this conversation, and I'm really grateful to be having it with students and with teachers and with parents and with people who have the power, because it's my belief that it's education that will transform this. That it is young women and girls and people of color like Ananya in STEM that are going to change this. People are now in these AI departments, and I heard it from Stanford human-centered AI department that they're saying that coders are now saying we want race theory. We want to know history, that people who are predicting the future should know a little something about the past. And so making these kinds of interdisciplinary connections are really very important.
Thank you, Shalini. Thank you so much. Kate, do you want to add to that with regards to this question?
I don't think I have much more to add. I agree completely with what Shalini has said, and you just put it so well. I agree completely, and I think education is at the core of you know everything that we need to get this moving forward in a safe way.
Yeah, and Shalini, your film absolutely gets that conversation going. And that's part of the reason why it's so powerful and so important, because it really opens up the dialogue, as we've experienced actually by having this conversation, but just in general, that's what makes your film powerful as well. So thank you for that. Ananya, what are your thoughts?
I think in society that we have this notion that the people who change things are like saints. And then in creating these saint-like figures that inspire us, it also absolves us from responsibility to do anything, because we're like, oh, but I'm not a saint. I make mistakes. I'm like a regular human. So it's not me. But I think that there's a problem with characterizing some people as saints, because literally nobody is perfect. Like, people who make big change in crazy positive ways are just regular people. Like, I think Gandhi was really bad to his wife. I think there was something like Martin Luther King had an interesting family life as well. I want to say also was bad to his wife, and Mother Teresa was called by some to be like superficial. And so I think that everybody has beautiful sides to them, and everyone makes mistakes. So everyone has ownership to do things that are important, and we shouldn't just leave it to other people. And so when it comes with taking ownership, like I think I'm just reading the question in the chat. Like, sometimes when it comes to like sharing things about AI, as myself, I try and be as competent as possible and know my shit, but then also like just having compassion to understand where the other person's coming from, and then also courage and confidence. Like, that's all. That's like, it is what it is, you know. Yeah. And I think all those things coming together are all really important as well.
Yeah, we can all play our part, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I have another question here for all panelists. So whoever wants to chime in, what is the #1 thing that citizens can do to push back against unregulated and unethical AI?
I would say I just put encodedbias.com/take-action in the chat. I think we should all find the part of it that we are most connected to. This is such a broad issue, whether you care about facial recognition or you care about automated systems in healthcare or in education or in hiring. And also on the Encoded Bias Take Action site, there are a number of educational resources, including a Take Action toolkit and a number of reading materials and books where you can learn more about the issue.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for that. That's great.
Yeah, I'll add on to that as well. You know, I think, again, we all have a responsibility. I think, Yanya, what you said about there being like the godlike figures needs to be demystified, and that we all have a role and responsibility. I say to my girls, you know, just question like a 2-year-old, why? And if you don't get your answer, try keep pushing to make sure that you understand why and you're okay with the answer that comes back, because a lot of the time you do get the, oh no, that's, you don't need to worry about that. Well, why? No, it's, you know, and it gets all fudged and blurred so that you don't question, and pushing those buttons. And then, you know, we're fortunate to live in a democracy with a fairly sane leadership in Canada, and they do take responsibility and they do listen. So we have a responsibility to speak to our local MPs and to be vocal about you know, what's happening with the laws in Canada.
Mm.
And I just want to add, on the website, there are a number of actions that are around stopping surveillance in schools.
Right, which is a real concern.
Yeah. I think I have another question here. How can parents play a role in helping children understand AI?
Well, I think parents need to understand AI first. I think, coming back to what we were saying earlier on in the panel, was there's a public awareness role that needs to happen, and I don't think we've done that yet. You know, I think the youth are just as able to educate the parents as parents are back. You know, similar to coding, and you know, the space that we're in at KCJ, we see kids being so powerful in educating their parents in a space that they don't really understand. So I think being in our public education systems is really important, where we have that start, because it's accessible for every child, and every child in Canada has access to education, and then it comes to empowering and making the general public aware. But there's a ton of work to do. So they can visit our site, go to Coded Bias. We have the material for basic algorithms and what is an algorithm. And
thank you, Kate. I really want to ask this last question. It goes as follows: as activists, how do you engage in self-care and balance, pushing for change while avoiding burnout?
I know nothing about that.
Yes, right.
I'm totally not qualified. All I can say is we're in a moment where the only advice is to do the best we can. It is really, we are all heroes in this moment of our own lives and our own narratives, and my hat is off to all of us for just living through this moment, and just however we can do the best we can is the best we can.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I can say.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think for burnout in general, some things I've been trying to do more of is detaching myself from the output or result and just focusing on the input or what I can control. So then when I am focused on the input, it just matters like what I'm putting in, and then like the result is separate. And I get happy about doing the work. I think when I'm doing work that I enjoy, it feels like play. And then or if I feel purpose, it feels like meaningful work, then burnout doesn't really happen. To me, at least, burnout only happens when I'm doing work that I hate, or like I don't see meaning in, or it's like that I don't care about, like I couldn't care less about. So doing meaningful work that is important to you, and trying to enjoy it and realizing you get to do it. And for me, like gratitude about everything has made me so happy as well. So I think all of those things are interesting ideas as well to keep in mind.
Great.
Thank you so much. Well, on that note, I want to thank our wonderful panelists, Shalini, Ananya, Kate. Thank you to Hannah for monitoring the chat and for organizing this. And thanks to all of you who joined us this evening for this really enriching conversation that we had here tonight. Thank you to KCJ. Thank you to our donors once again. Thank you to everyone who's been involved in this, and take good care, everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.